Hello and welcome to the fifth installment of our AI for Business livestream series from ThoughtBot. My name is Ferdia. I'm a senior product designer at ThoughtBot, and I'm going to be taking you through the series for the next about 4 weeks maybe we've left in this series. If you've seen some of the past episodes, you'll know some of this kind of preamble. But yeah, as we said in some of the past ones, this is a little bit different from our other AI in Focus series with Chad. For these streams, we're trying to keep it quite light, no really kind of heavy technical definitions or anything like that. We're also going to try to keep each stream quite short, so hopefully to 30 minutes or less. So yeah, it should be nice and short each week. Some weeks I'm going to be joined by some of my amazing teammates, and they'll stop by to have a chat and share their thoughts. And this week, again, it's just me for this week, so you'll have to deal with my long soliloquies. And yeah, let's jump in. So at this point in the series, as I said, we're on the fifth stream. In previous streams, we looked at kind of the history of AI and how you can kind of try to harness that. And then we looked at kind of two of the three areas that AI can be really beneficial for your product or for your business right now. We covered automation a couple of weeks ago, and we looked at cognitive insight last week. And this week we'll be looking at cognitive engagement, which is the third of those those three areas. If you haven't watched any of those previous streams, all the recordings are available on YouTube, and I'd recommend watching them back, just because this one will kind of make more sense if you've seen the previous ones, but you can watch them in isolation as well. It's no hassle. And then later on in the series, we'll be kind of covering some of the challenges you might face when trying to incorporate AI into your product or business and how to overcome them. We touch on some of them as we're kind of going through it, but we'll dedicate a little section at the end, or a couple of streams at the end, to those challenges specifically. We're aiming to keep the cadence of one stream per week up, so we should be here next Friday as well. But as I said, if you miss any of those live, they'll all be available on YouTube anyway. And finally, just a disclaimer again at the start of each live stream. When I say AI for the purposes of this series, we're using this as a really broad kind of umbrella term. It's definitely a bit of a catch-all. It's but it kind of helps us stay focused on the outcomes rather than sort of the technical detail or the technical minutiae. And it keeps things simple. And that's the purpose of this series. We're looking at AI, not from a technical standpoint, but kind of from more of a product or business sort of standpoint. Okay, so let's jump into today's cognitive engagement. Okay, so as I mentioned, there are kind of three areas where AI can be really helpful and really beneficial right now. We looked at automation already. We looked at cognitive insights last week. So now we're going to look at number 3 on this list, which is cognitive engagement. Okay, so what is cognitive engagement? It's basically the use of AI or artificial intelligence to create kind of meaningful and dynamic interactions between humans and machines. Okay, so the most obvious example here is chatbots. We see them all the time now. I'm sure most of us have probably interacted with them at some point. And again, like we saw with cognitive RPA in the automation live stream or cognitive insights last week, cognitive engagement systems leverage AI technologies to kind of understand user intent, maybe to maintain context and to respond in a kind of personalized way. So they're a little bit linked to kind of the data analysis of cognitive insights and to the automation of cognitive RPA. So the three are kind of converging or overlapping, certainly, at least. So they're leveraging a lot of those similar AI technologies. These systems, as we've seen, and this is a common thread here, they can continuously learn basically from past interactions, so they can improve over time in a similar way that a human would. And it just means that these conversations can kind of become progressively more, I guess, intuitive and more effective at resolving issues. And again, we're going to come across a lot of these buzzwords that we've spoken about before, like natural language processing and machine learning and generative AI, and that's all great. But again, for the purposes of this live stream series, we're not going to dwell on those things too much. For our purposes, we just need to know what value cognitive engagement can deliver for us. So for us in that context, we just need to know that it can handle basically fairly complex queries. They can kind of maybe anticipate user needs, and they can even sort of detect frustration or satisfaction, these kind of chatbots, if they're advanced. So they basically allow your business to enhance customer and also employee interaction experiences at scale. So when you're dealing with a lot of volume, they can be really, really helpful for that use case. So yeah, the key thing here to take away is that they provide value through efficient interactions and kind of problem solving at scale, at a big scale. There are kind of two primary use cases then that might apply to your business for where you can kind of use cognitive engagement. The first of these is for customers, and this is probably the most obvious one, because as I said, we see this a lot already with chatbots. It's become quite common recently. In most cases, these chatbots are kind of virtual assistants. They're using natural language processing and maybe sentiment analysis, which allows them to kind of provide this sort of instant, very human-like response to customer inquiries. Okay. And so the responses you can get from these chatbots, very much like what you would get from ChatGPT or Claude or other AI systems. It's that kind of conversational written approach. They can kind of handle routine questions, and then if something is too complex, the idea would be that can then be escalated to a customer service agent, a human agent who can deal with those more complex, nuanced kind of cases. And that's a great way to improve service efficiency. So to handle these routine things through chatbots, and then if something gets more complex, to kind of escalate it up there. Great thing about the chatbots as well is that they're available 24/7, so they can help your customers with kind of their simple inquiries or simple questions at any time, even if you have no support staff on at that time. Okay, and as we said, like every basically AI system, they have the ability to learn over time and improve, so they can get better at the job as they go, same way that a human would. So that's kind of like the obvious use case is in chatbot form for customers, and the kind of benefits here are obvious enough, that you have that 24-hour support, and that it can kind of handle things quickly after a couple of prompts from a user. If you wanted to take this to the next level, You can actually kind of do, and some companies are already doing this, where they kind of have some spoken communication, which is kind of working in a similar way. So for spoken communication, they might layer on a couple of additional technologies. So you might have automatic speech recognition, and you might have text to speech as well, or text to speech synthesis. So basically, what these things can do, if you're to layer on some of these additional technologies, if you ring up a customer support number, and first of all, you basically have to wait for them, to read out, like, press 1 for accounts and 2 for whatever, right? So it takes a long time, and then you get put on hold for ages, and you have to listen to this like dreadful kind of rendition of Symphony 40 by Mozart or something like that. And you're told every few minutes, that your call is important, and you're the next caller in line, or whatever it might be. These additional technologies, in theory, would get rid of all those problems. They're having to wait to press the right number. They're having to be stuck in a long line, and so on. So the theory here is that if you ring up a company, you just start talking, and the cool thing is you can start talking in your own language if you're a non-native speaker, to a company that's based in a different region. And the AI customer support agent would respond back in the same language and ask you further questions until the issue is resolved. Right. So that is what some of these technologies can do. And that, obviously, there's a really sort of clearly enhanced customer experience there, especially for those types of businesses that require a lot of customer support, where they're getting kind of a lot of inquiries about things, maybe products a little bit complicated or something like that. So there are really big gains available here, and these technologies do exist. And I think, the benefits are quite clear. But as we've probably seen with everything we've looked at so far, there's always a note of caution with kind of adopting this stuff. AI, these kind of agents and systems, they're very, very good, but they're not infallible. Okay. Customers obviously are going to appreciate the convenience of the AI chatbot, around 24/7 and so on. But they'll become quickly frustrated if the systems can't resolve kind of complex issues, probably a lot more frustrated than they would become, if they were talking to a real person, especially if, like, the chatbot misunderstands, or they keep asking the same question. You can sometimes get stuck in these loops with chatbots with people. And yeah, so this kind of frustration is particularly, I guess, relevant in particular industries. So if you're thinking like financial services or maybe legal services, where the issues themselves are quite nuanced, so there's a lot of kind of gray area there. And there might also be like some really high emotional stakes involved. So, if you're dealing with your personal finances, or you're dealing with like a legal issue, you probably don't want to be, or you're kind of at a higher state of emotion, I guess, and you don't want to be dealing with the chatbot in kind of those scenarios. So customers, like, if they have these kind of negative experiences, it's cognitively demanding for customers, and they can ultimately decide to abandon a service if they're getting kind of poor customer support. That is a realistic outcome for this. So you do have to be wary when you're bringing these systems in, that you're not going to cause a negative repercussion with your customer base. And a good example of kind of trying to find the right balance between sort of maybe leaning on AI systems a little bit too much, and having to kind of move back is Klarna. So for those who don't know, Klarna is a Swedish unicorn fintech company. They provide online financial services, basically. And their CEO has been very bullish on the powers of AI in the past. They made kind of quite a splash in 2023. They basically stopped hiring at that point, and they were kind of really championing AI chatbots, which they kind of claim could handle the majority of their customer service volume. So they were kind of looking at those benefits that we talked about. You can handle a lot of these kind of simpler cases. And so they basically stopped hiring for 2 years and were kind of shrinking their support team through attrition in that way. So they just kind of weren't replacing people that were leaving. But then in 2025, Klarna had to do a kind of a recalibration, I guess. They weren't going to abandon AI, but they kind of had to pivot a little bit to, I guess, re-emphasize the importance of kind of human interactions with their customers. So their CEO had this kind of tweet where they said, that we kind of should have realized this, but basically Klarna wants to try to become the best at offering a human to speak to. And that's probably a good approach. You want to have people there when they're needed, and it's just kind of trying to filter out some of the noise maybe, so that someone is always there available for those cases where it's needed. So for companies who go down this road of kind of leaning on these systems, it doesn't always work out for them if they maybe lean into it too hard or kind of too fast. That's kind of the Klarna story. Worth probably also noting here that there could be, and this is just kind of speculation, but if a lot of companies go down the route of chatbots kind of as their customer support service, there's maybe a potential competitive advantage in having good human customer service agents. It could help you kind of stand out from competitors that you can actually get on the phone and talk to someone. That's just worth keeping in mind as well when I suppose the general industry trends are moving one way. Sometimes it can be beneficial to kind of swim against the current a little bit. So a little bit like what we saw with cognitive insights last week, where there's kind of, I suppose, a big help for strategic decision making, but you shouldn't replace it with kind of an AI system. You can think of kind of cognitive engagement with customers in kind of the same way. It's something that can help deliver value and a better experience to your customers. But for now, at least, it shouldn't entirely replace your people. Your kind of best bet here, a bit like the Klarna example, is to take a kind of a more balanced approach, where AI is maybe handling the routine inquiries, while human agents then tackle complex issues. So you're freeing up humans to work on those complex issues, by allowing the AI to tackle the simple things. But you do have people there to deal with those complex issues, those kind of high value customer interactions. So it's trying to strike the right balance there is key, if you're interested in bringing cognitive engagement in to kind of deal with your customers. Cool. So that's kind of it on the customer side. Now, I had mentioned that there are kind of two primary use cases for cognitive engagement. The first one was with customers, and the second one then is kind of internally, so to use with your team or with your employees, depending on your position in your business. So yeah, basically, as kind of with customers, large enterprises or companies might also benefit from having a sort of internal employee assistance or sort of HR tool. So these kind of AI-powered virtual assistants, they can be used to help employees with maybe HR-related queries or onboarding processes, or maybe internal knowledge kind of management, or even, like improving workplace efficiency and employee experience, that kind of thing. We actually do something a bit like this at TopBot ourselves, where we kind of use machine learning to answer questions from internal documentation. And that's really a really helpful resource. It was fairly easy for our brilliant devs to do. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely do reach out to us. And then finally, I guess the final benefit of kind of this internal thing, or cognitive engagement internally, is that it can give your team an easy way to interact with sort of complex data. So you might remember, if you've seen last week's stream about cognitive insights, we looked at how AI can maybe identify links in data that would be impossible to spot with the human eye, or just take too long to spot for humans. But sometimes those decisions basically can be a little bit convoluted for people to understand. So a great use case for cognitive engagement is kind of to layer on top of that, and basically allow anyone to easily interact with that data, with that data sets and those insights. So you can basically, without needing to be a data scientist, if you were, say, a business development employee or something, you could maybe ask the AI assistant, like, why has foot traffic dropped in a particular shop or in a particular branch or whatever, and then it can kind of give you an immediate sort of conversational style response. So there's definitely potential there to allow people to interact with data as well. It's kind of another benefit of it. This sort of employee engagement, it's maybe a little bit less obvious than the customer facing AI stuff, because I think we've all been customers with chatbots. So we're going to drill a little bit deeper into this in case it's relevant for your business. And to do that, I'm going to return to our kind of long-running example now of Tot Burgers. As some of you might know by now, Tot Burgers is an entirely fictitious fast food restaurant chain, which is a side hustle for Totbot. We've got lots of fictitious branches now around London, and things are going great, and we're spreading across the UK and into Europe. So it's going well. But as we discussed again in previous streams, we're kind of struggling to keep up with demand, and we've got this problem where our deliveries during rush hours, they're taking too long, and we want to kind of reduce that delivery time. Okay. So last week we looked at how cognitive insights could streamline our kind of deliveries during rush hour by tackling both driver scheduling. So how many drivers and where they're placed at these different times. We also use it to tackle sort of order triaging. So which branch are specific orders being assigned to based on kind of order volume and traffic conditions and all these other things that will feature in there. So that's how we're kind of going to reduce our delivery time. So we're thinking, right, this is great. We've invested in this project, in this system. It's working. We're getting deliveries out, and we're getting them more efficiently to our customers. But we now hit a new set of problems in Tot Burgers. And the issue we're having now is that restaurant managers and drivers aren't happy. So they're coming to us in kind of HQ or Tot Burgers HQ because they're, some of our managers, maybe they're confused as to why their branch is more busy than usual, or maybe they're coming with kind of a more worrying case, which is contacting us and wondering why their branch is much less busy, and drivers similarly could be asking questions like, why have they been scheduled on fewer shifts or on more shifts or at different times or whatever. They might be wondering, did they do something wrong? Are they being punished? It's not fair. And the answer to those questions is probably not. Like, they probably haven't done anything wrong and not being punished. Like, again, this is a bit of a rudimentary example, but the decisions basically that are being made by the system around kind of order triaging and the scheduling of drivers, they may very well actually be based on sound data from that cognitive insights project. And it just might have spotted some more efficient ways to do things. So it's kind of shaking things up a little bit. But without transparency around those decisions, and we did speak a little bit about that last week as well, but Tot Burgers will face kind of confusion and resistance from our team if we don't have that transparency. So transparency and kind of engagement with the team is critical to the success of the adoption of the new technology, or of it, in this case, of AI. And as I mentioned, we will touch on this, we'll delve into this topic in more detail in a future stream when we're kind of looking at those adoption challenges that you're going to face maybe when you try to roll out AI. But this is definitely an area that cognitive engagement could come in and be really, really helpful. So Tot Burgers could leverage cognitive engagement here to help the team better understand the logic behind the decisions being taken. So they could interact with the natural language processing chatbot, and that will provide our team with kind of an easy to understand way to query decisions. Okay. So for example, our branch manager who's concerned with the reduction in their order volume could ask the chatbot questions about that decision. Why are orders down? Why is whatever happening? And the chatbot could then explain the logic behind it. Okay, so why is this outcome occurring? And hopefully then it could also identify some areas that the branch could improve to pick up more orders in future. Okay, so for example, let's say Cognitive Insights has spotted that the kitchen of a particular branch is so busy during rush hour that it's leading to employee turnover, which is ultimately hurting their bottom line. So we're reducing orders temporarily there, and because we don't want the staff to be so overrun that they keep quitting. And And maybe the solution here then is to suggest, to take on more part-time staff, and then you get more orders and you won't have to deal with the costs of replacing staff so regularly. So it can kind of help the manager who's maybe used to the kitchen being in a certain condition, which is, really, really busy and really hectic. And it can kind of explain, okay, well, this is actually hurting your bottom line over the long run. So let's try it this way and explain it that way. Or maybe the branch manager realizes then that it's not taking on more staff, so that they actually need to physically expand the kitchen. And then maybe our cognitive insights or cognitive engagement, could suggest, our system could suggest to the branch manager that actually there's some internal documentation here about how to go about expanding your kitchen, and there might even be funding or grants available from Top Burgers HQ, to do that. So it can kind of help them resolve that, to help them get their orders back to where they want to be. But at least they can query the decision, understand the decision, and get a better idea of what's involved with that. Okay. So yeah, on this one, the manager can basically easily understand the decisions. They might have a clear plan of how they want to improve, and they can kind of, I guess, influence the future and take action now to kind of improve their branch. That's giving, obviously, managers as well a sense of ownership. It's giving them a sense of inclusion, so they feel included in that decision-making process. The fact that they can query it and get responses and understand it, and in our Top Burgers case, it might not be, might be a bit overkill again, because, we might not have enough branches. But if you're dealing with, the likes of McDonald's or something that has like tons and tons and tons of branches, dealing with that kind of internal volume of queries going to HQ would be quite overwhelming. So, it could be useful in this. It's also giving managers a sense of control. So, if your system is good and it's giving some advice on, this is why this decision is being made, and here are things you can do to change it, or areas you can improve in. So they feel like, well, I can actually take action on this. I've got some control into the overall output. And the same would apply for our drivers as well. They might learn why they're on fewer delivery shifts, and they might also, get some suggestions about ways to be more productive or to help get more shifts, whatever it might be. Whatever the decision logic is there, it's explaining it to them and maybe helping them figure out, okay, so this is what I need to do to do more. So that's kind of cognitive engagement basically working for internally for employees. Okay, so to wrap up for this session, I hope I didn't skip through things too quickly. But the bottom line here with cognitive engagement is that it's another incredibly powerful and kind of beneficial application of AI. It can be kind of used as a support agent or a co-pilot to engage with both customers and employees. So you've got the kind of the two wings of it. And similarly to kind of all our things that we've discussed with AI so far, while it can play an important role in kind of your AI strategy, businesses shouldn't be using AI, or they should be using it maybe as an enabler rather than as a replacement for kind of humans. And we saw that with Klarna. We saw how they were, how they had to reverse basically on their decision. And we saw before last week as well with cognitive insights, with strategic decision making. There are risks involved with letting systems operate on their own like this. Okay, so the key thing here is just finding the right balance. You want to leverage AI's efficiency and the kind of benefits it can bring. And so again, that's your quick access customer support, 24/7 support available, being able to query and interact with complex data for an internal tool, and being kind of given actions that you can take to improve things. You want to leverage those benefits, but you also kind of want to mitigate some of the risks, which is causing frustration, feeling isolated, maybe if it's an internal tool, not having someone at the end of the phone that you can talk to, or a manager or something, and that can help resolve your issue. So it's about trying to find that right balance. It probably differs slightly from company to company, industry to industry. So you mentioned there's some high stakes industries where this maybe doesn't fit in as well. So only you can really know what that balance is by listening to your customers. But yeah, there's a balance there to be struck. There's big potential kind of operational and efficiency gains there. And yeah, you just need to figure out for your specific case what those are. And as I said, just don't become over-reliant on these systems. They won't do everything for you. People still appreciate a little bit of a human touch. That brings us up to the 30 minutes. So I'm going to let you all go back to your days. We'll be back here next Friday, where we'll be looking at AI, whether you should kind of evolve in an evolutionary fashion or in a revolutionary fashion. So looking forward to that one. Thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.